So you've been diagnosed with insulin resistance, but nothing really seems to work to help with your energy levels and your metabolism. And you've probably been told a million times over just to cut carbs out of your diet entirely and to forget they ever existed. But that doesn't seem to be helpful or sustainable long term either. Hunger and major carb cravings are actually two really common symptoms of insulin resistance that can leave you feeling hopeless, like there's nothing you can do to lose weight or maintain your weight and feel better. Well, fret no more. As a dietitian nutritionist, today I'm going to share with you how you can go from low energy and famished to nourished and satisfied, all while lowering your insulin levels. And guess what? You don't have to cut carbs out of your diet entirely to do that. I know, I probably should have led with that. All right, so why does insulin resistance make you so hungry in the first place? Insulin is a hormone that helps us bring blood sugar from the foods that we eat into our cells for use. So it helps with that energy metabolism. But with insulin resistance, it's kind of how it sounds. Your body is resistant to the effects of insulin. So what ends up happening is your blood glucose gets higher because your insulin's not working properly, and then your body needs to excrete more insulin to try to continue to get that blood sugar in your cells. And this can lead to a lot of fatigue and also feelings of needing to compensate because insulin can stimulate your appetite more. So you're in this endless cycle of needing to have more carbohydrates and quick energy foods to get your brain feeling okay. And then subsequently, that's leading to more issues with your blood sugar and your insulin. So it's a vicious cycle. But luckily with insulin and blood glucose, you can do a lot of work with your diet to make improvements to make these labs look better. And I really hate coming at this from a negative standpoint, so hopefully it doesn't come off that way in this video. However, there are 4 main mistakes that I see people making that cause worsening insulin resistance and worsening hunger and cravings. So let's break down those 4 common mistakes so you can correct them and get on the path to lower insulin today. Mistake number 1 that I see happen all the time in my profession is having too little calories, or those 1,200 calorie really restrictive diets. There's unfortunately a lot of misinformation about this and misconceptions about this, honestly, as well. We'll typically think something along the lines of, all right, if I'm having 2,000 calories now and I have 1,200 calories, that's an 800 calorie deficit. So I can be cranking off the weight, cranking away at the weight. I don't know what I'm saying. I can be cranking away at my goals and losing multiple pounds a week with this large calorie deficit, right? The logic is there. I get you. But this is a big mistake. Your body perceives this as a form of famine. So it sees that all of a sudden you went from one number to a very, very smaller number. And so your metabolic rate is going to adapt to that new number so that your body can not continuously lose weight. That's a bad survival strategy, right? If you're continuously rapidly losing weight, then the human species would die off really easily, hypothetically, because our little primal brains are back in the days where we didn't have a lot of food available to us. And therefore, it was really important that we use the calories that we have for energy and hunting and keeping us alive long term, rather than short term, because that would be like a bad thing if we just died off really quickly. So this is your body's protective mechanism, long story short. And I truly believe if you are doing this one mistake, none of the other tips that I give you are going to help because your body is going to be starving and your metabolic rate is going to be slowed. Now, this isn't to say that you can't be in a calorie deficit, period. I'm not anti-calorie deficit. It's just that it needs to be smaller and more gradual over time. And people don't like to hear that because that means slower, more gradual weight loss and progress. But alas, it is something that's going to be more likely to last in the long term. And you are much more likely to keep off weight if you do it in a slow and gradual way. It's just like, telling people that they can't become a millionaire overnight. It's just like, it's sexy to say that you can have passive income and make $10,000 a day. What's not sexy is telling people to budget, and I feel like that's the equivalent. I'm having my Orgain shake today. This is the sweet vanilla bean nutrition shake. Really good. Highly recommend. I do have a code DBN30 if you want 30% off Orgain, but that's a side note. Links to all the supplements that I enjoy and like in the description. I have a lot of discount codes as well if you're interested. And last point on this, what I mean by a smaller calorie deficit would be something along the lines of 200 to 300 calories a day of a deficit. So if 2,100 calories is your needs for the day, like without being in a deficit, then a deficit would look something like 1,800 calories and no smaller. All right, so if you're eating enough calories and you're still not feeling satisfied, you're feeling hangry and craving foods all day long, the second mistake that I see very commonly happen is you're not having high fiber and you're not having high protein. So in other words, you're not having very satisfying foods. Fiber is a carbohydrate that your body can't fully digest, so it helps kind of slow down your GI tract and the food that moves through your GI tract to help you feel satisfied for longer. It helps release hormones that tell your body, hey, I'm still working on this food. You don't need any more right now. Fiber plays a really crucial role in digestive health and blood sugar management too, because when you have a carbohydrate with fiber versus having a carbohydrate with no fiber, your blood sugar acts totally different. So say you're having a little Twizzler and say you're having a banana with whole grain toast and peanut butter. That is going to give your body a little bit of a spike in blood sugar, but it's going to maintain it. And then the Twizzler is probably going to give you a big old spike and dip not even an hour later. This definitely affects your hunger signals because your body is telling you, hey, this is not enough. I'm not satisfied. I need more food. Usually I recommend aiming for about 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day, more if you're a male, less if you're a female, but somewhere in that range is usually pretty good for blood sugar management. Protein is another really common culprit. So usually protein recommendations can be very different for different folks because if you are a bodybuilding athlete versus if you're someone who works out frequently but are not an athlete versus someone who's very sedentary, you might need different protein goals. But going off the patients that I see, they're usually moderately active. So I recommend somewhere along the lines of 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. So if you are 125 pounds, that's 125 grams of protein. If you are, say, 200 pounds, 200 grams of protein per day can be a pretty hard thing to reach. So I would go on the lower end, probably closer to like 0.7 or 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. Once they showed that a high protein diet can help improve weight loss, it can also improve waist circumference and blood glucose. So it has a lot of benefits to get in an adequate amount of protein, but you really don't have to go overboard with it. I would just aim for closer to that 70 to 100 grams per day at least. And usually that's pretty good to help people feel more full and satisfied. If you're totally lost and your number still feels weird based on the calculation that I just gave, a good rule of thumb is just to aim for somewhere around 75 to 125 grams of protein at least, and kind of see where you naturally fall, where you feel the best after a couple days of eating that way and logging your protein intake. I don't like logging long term. I just like to get a ballpark for how much I'm having or my client is having in a day. And then after you get that number that feels good to you, you can kind of move away from logging and say, okay, I know I usually feel good when I have my protein oatmeal, when I have chicken for lunch, and when I have some sort of protein for dinner. That usually makes me feel pretty good. Maybe a Greek yogurt in there too. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to check out the description box below because I have a lot of discount codes for my favorite supplements and fitness products. I also have a free 1-week meal plan that's dedicated to PCOS and insulin resistance, so you can make sure to check that out if you're interested in getting some meal and snack ideas for better blood sugar. All right, mistake number 3 that I see commonly happen that leads to more dissatisfaction with your diet and low energy is cutting carbs instead of choosing the right carbs. So basically throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying, I'm not going to have carbs at all versus choosing more quality ones. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, there's a difference between a Twizzler and a banana and a Pop-Tart and a whole grain piece of toast in terms of both nutrition quality and in terms of how they affect your blood sugar because of the fiber or lack thereof. And listen, some folks may have success on low carb diets. I'm not saying that low carb is bad for everyone. I do think some people thrive off of it. But if you're having to force a low carb diet, that's a really good sign that your body is just kind of rejecting it. Our body prefers to have carbohydrates first as energy so it can preserve protein and fat for more important things like building muscle and for hormone balance. And what I find too with low carb diets is a lot of the reason that they work really well is because you are having the low quality carbs in the first place. And now that you're not having them, you're replacing them with other healthy options like protein and vegetables and stuff like that that you didn't normally have before. Whereas I find that people would have the same success typically if you just switched some of the carbohydrates that you're having to more high quality ones and also improved protein and vegetable intake too. So you can absolutely get just as much benefit from swapping your carbs from simple to complex carbs. So an example of simple carbohydrates would be like candies, maybe unrefined pasta, white bread, dessert foods, and sugar and processed foods in general. Not to say you can never have them, but these are the ones that are going to affect your blood sugar the most, so you want to moderate them. Examples of healthy carbs and complex carbs that have fiber that slow down blood sugar is going to be any kind of whole fruit, whole grains like whole grain tortillas, whole wheat toast, whole grain pasta, quinoa. Of course, there's your starchy vegetables like sweet potatoes, spaghetti squash, corn, and your typical regular potatoes, and things like beans and lentils also fit this category. And an honorable mention, of course, to oatmeal, which is a really high fiber and relatively high protein food as well. There's so much hate on carbs these days, but I promise you, you will feel so much better and still lower your insulin levels while maintaining carbs in your diet. Just focus on quality a majority of the time and have those other types of carbs that we mentioned in moderation. And mistake number 4 that I find often happens when we're not feeling our best and we're trying to moderate that blood sugar is skipping meals and going longer than 3 to 4 hours between those meals. I highly recommend eating at least every 3 to 4 hours within your normal wake period and eating within 2 hours of waking and stopping most meals within 2 hours of sleeping, just to help with sleep. If you lean towards hypoglycemia, which I do have another video on that I can leave below, I would aim closer to about every 2 to 3 hours, or at least check in with your hunger every 2 to 3 hours. When we go too long between meals, your body dips in blood sugar. And if we go excessively long, what tends to happen is we overcompensate at the next meal, which can lead to a bigger insulin spike. So if you're only eating 2 or 3 times a day, you're having 2 or 3 big insulin spikes versus smaller ones if you eat smaller meals but more frequently. And of course, eating every 3 to 4 hours, I do highly recommend making sure that you're having a balanced meal, so carbs, fat, and protein to keep your blood sugar steady, because otherwise, if it's just carbs, you're gonna feel that hunger just an hour later. And if it's just protein or just fat, you're probably gonna still feel low energy because it takes your body a lot longer to process those things than it does carbohydrates for energy. All right, I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know if you have any questions down below in the comment section and maybe some topic ideas that you'd like to see me cover in the future on blood sugar or insulin resistance, or PCOS, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already so you can get new videos every week. I post nutrition content and also some fitness videos as well. So if you enjoy that, then definitely make sure that you hit the subscribe button and notification bell. And if you want to keep hanging out with me, I'll leave a video here up on the screen that you can click over to. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.